transaction, or investment. Copyright 2014 VPN Partners. All rights reserved. Terms of use apply. Reproduction, adaptation, distribution, public display, exhibition for profit, or storage in any electronic storage media in whole or in part is prohibited under penalty of law.
Hello everyone. Here we are for the, I think this is our fourth show, is that right? Of Process Wariors, or third, maybe third.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think it's fourth, actually.
Anyway, folks, we really appreciate everything that's going on. Lots going on in the markets and stuff. We'll hang that till in the morning, because we'll be doing a Market Thunder show in the morning, and of course you'll have commentary, but markets look pretty flat today, kind of non-eventful at the moment anyway. Today we're pretty excited about what we're planning on doing is Mitch and I are going to have a conversation with you guys concerning screening, and this may be one of two shows. The way it looks right now from the PowerPoint that we have up, it's going to be probably one of two. We're going to have to extend this screening out to Thursday's show as well. I promised that we'd get into maintenance, but I guess that's another broken promise. I'm going to stop promising. What do you think, Mitch? Might be a good idea, right?
Well, I think more pressing issues have risen to the top when it comes to what we've been seeing when it comes to stock screening, which is why we need to have this conversation.
Yeah, and I'm famous for over-promising and underperforming. Unfortunately, I know it's supposed to be the other way, but I always get really anxious and I want to do so much, and it doesn't always work out that way. So, those of you knowing me for a while. No, I always get it done. It's just maybe not in the order that we thought we were going to get it done. Anyway, no, we're excited about this because there's a lot of issues that we see out on the street within our community, and every time we dig into a portfolio that you folks are diligently working on, we find a lot of little nuances and things that actually cause more havoc within the software than what we would like to see it happening. We try to do everything we can to avoid these things. We try to monitor. We actually look in all the settings in the portfolios. We know what they are. We know when you change them. We're just always trying to determine whether you did something right or wrong. And sometimes you might get an email from us that says, it looks like you changed some settings in your portfolios. We just want to check, make sure if you had any questions. And gosh, I'm gonna beg you. I'm gonna look like Sterling on the last night, asking everybody's forgiveness for his racial comments. No, that's not what I'm gonna do. But I need you guys to reach out to us. I need you folks to go. Let us review everything you do. I know most of you feel like you've got this thing under control, but a little bit of a review by us, take a few minutes to go, give you a thumbs up. And we can go forward and everybody feel good that knowing that you're applying the process that is appropriately built for your customers, and that you're delivering what you thought you were delivering, so you don't get any weird things coming out in orders and those type of things. A simple thing as missing data can really screw up VPM. So when it has a little red missing data, VPM doesn't know what to do. It knows it's missing, but it doesn't know what to do about it until you tell it. So that'll be on the maintenance session. We'll get into that. But Mitch, you have any setup things that you want to talk about before we dig into the presentation?
Well, just as we go into this, as you mentioned earlier, we're digging more into the portfolios that advisors have running in the system. And, we can see what advisors are doing. What we don't always see is how much money is actually run in those strategies. There's a lot of portfolios out there with the name test in it or demo or something along those lines. So those are somewhat obvious to us that there's probably not real dollars invested into it. But when we're looking at, I don't even know how many thousands of portfolios that are in the system. It's hard for us to dig through each of these and put the same amount of attention to a portfolio that is running if we don't know that it's actually running real investments in it.
Yeah, I think it's been almost 10,000 between Portfolio Expert and 2.0. I think there's like 3,400 or so.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton. There's a ton in there because it takes forever to crunch through those. So I would just say, if at any point something seems amiss, regardless of how you would want to define that, reach out to us, because if you as the advisor are beginning to wonder if something's not right on it, let us know. We're working more and more to be more and more proactive, watching out for key things. Even this week we saw something that jumped out to us on our advisors' portfolios. So we're going to start a new process to scrape through and try to find out potential issues before it becomes an issue with some real dollars. So, I guess the name of the game of it is just stay connected with us, and if you happen to have any questions, just let us know. We have a variety of methods to be reached at, and if you have questions, we can either tackle it one-on-one, or we can do it in a broadcast setting like this, because if you have questions, I'm sure there's a couple other advisors out there with those same type of questions out there.
One of the saddest things that we see is we get an advisor go, we're canceling our account. It's just the performance hasn't been there, and we find out that they did an update wrong and that their allocation factor had been skewed to the point where they could never, we had somebody call us once and we haven't been over 40% invested, and you keep talking about we're 90 or 80, we can't figure out why we're not. And as soon as we looked into it, and the situation had been going on for well over a year, so they're doing 20, 40%, they're getting 6 or 7% return when they should have been getting 14, 20, whatever, because they weren't utilizing the capital. And VPM is a capital demand type factor that drives from a pure VPM strategy. Is it's not an allocation strategy, it's more of a dynamic strategy that happens. So if it's not set right, you're not going to utilize the cash, and that's going to be an issue. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to start clicking away on the show here, and we're I guess this is the title. You can't see all of it. Mitch put this together. I didn't do this, man, so
thanks for the blame.
Yeah, exactly. But what we want to do here is we're going to talk specifically about screening, and that means we're specifically talking about individual equities today. We will do some shows on building ETF and mutual fund strategies. That will be next, but we've been having some questions. We're right at the end of a quarter. We just finished earnings here, and folks are rescreening, and there's items that are coming up on this that we feel like need to be talked about, and that's why we're doing this show today. Nice thing is you can watch it over and over if you can stand it as many times as you want to hopefully get some good data here. So one of the things is, once again, I was out of the office all morning, so Mitch put this together. First time I've seen these screens, so this really is an ad lib, which is good because we know this stuff sideways, forwards, backwards. Wake up sometimes thinking about some of these things, but reduce the investable research. Why don't you talk about that, Mitch, since you put that up there?
Yeah, I mean the biggest question is, well, why should we be screening stocks? What does that mean? What are you doing? So those are the questions that I ask anytime someone is working with a stock portfolio, because essentially what anybody is trying to do when they start working with stocks is to take that entire investable universe and boil that down to something that is actually realistically investable for clients. I mean, how many times have you seen either an index or some other benchmark that's out there say that this is not an actual investable strategy? And the reason for that is because you can't exactly match all the components of something like the S&P 500. You can get pretty close, especially if you have large enough assets. But most people don't have, what did we figure? It's going to be like $10 million to run something along the lines of the S&P 500 strategy and actually have all the different positions in it at the weightings.
It's a 0.25% allocation, so you start trying to do that on 100% or a $100,000 account, it's not going to work out, and you're going to have 350 positions. So it does take a certain amount of capital. And I guess one of the things I'd love to, we're still trying to find the magic individual that has run that particular account because it's absolutely amazing. I've recently had a conversation with an advisor that it actually might plug and play. It's a pretty large account. It's a $100 million case that they're working on. And hopefully we can plug that in there because they're worried about diversification. Well, guess what? You got the entire S&P 500 diversified. There's all kinds of stuff in there. So we won't get too far off on that. But anyway, so creating a consistent approach to a random market. So let's face it, most of the things that are going on in the marketplace are random. Some of them sometimes become somewhat predictable where the trends are in place and you can expect periods of time where you see things to go up. But one of the things that we want to discuss today is, and I know this is one of the topics I want to really harp in on, is the eliminating the human elements from your screening and filtering process. I had to tell a quick story because one of my old partners had a lithograph on his wall. Mitch has heard this too many times. Sorry, Mitch. But it had two professors sitting in a room, and there was a chalkboard. It was sort of like and this amazing complex equation, had a little squiggly line in the middle, and then had the down at the bottom it had the answers to the equation, but right next to the squiggly line it said a miracle happened. And so the other professor's going, can you tell me about the miracle? And what we see a lot of advisors doing is they'll do a screen, and then when it comes down to the filter and the decision process, it's a dartboard, it's a guess. Well, we kind of like this stock and we like that stock. That is just as random as it gets, and we've seen a lot of mistakes made about that. And I'll save some of the comments I have for that because there's some things you can do to keep a really stringent view of how that's going to go. So, Mitch, do you have any comments on this line here?
No, I mean that's pretty much it. As far as when advisors say that they have a strategy, quite often we do find out that their strategy is more talk than it is structure.
Yeah.
And that's problematic for both you, your staff trying to run that strategy, as well as your clients trying to adhere to it. So
yeah, and you trying to explain something that doesn't really have, and I guess our goal for you folks, it may not be your goal for you, but it is for us, is that we're trying to get everything structured so everything's in a wrapper so that every decision you make has a reason that you make it. And if you do it that way, it's easy to present, it's easy to authenticate into the markets, and then to report what you've done for these clients. And that's, I guess we have some folks that run absolute pristine, what I would call VPM shops, and doing a lot of the things that there are. But the randomness that's brought in by hunches, and well, we really don't like that because 3 years ago we got hurt on that. One thing a buddy of mine taught me early on in my career on the trading floor, he said, just know the markets don't owe you anything. They don't owe you a dime. They don't owe you back for a bad trade that didn't work out because you thought it was going to go different. So that's one of the things you want to, that's part of that attitude and opinion thing that we talked about a lot. So finding ideas that fit strategy and outlook, and I would even add to the two previous shows that we did when we were talking about philosophy and finding ideas, is to match them with not only philosophical and I guess things that you're comfortable with that are in the marketplace, whether it's something as simple as a style box or an asset class. Maybe you want to be a mid-cap value or growth, or you want to be a blended strategy. Whatever it is, a lot of you have developed attitudes over the time, over those investments, and it's okay to have those. There's just a right way to bring them into a screening process and to authenticate that so that your beliefs and all that come in. We beat that horse pretty bad last time we wrote it. So we'll go on to the next sheet. And so we got 3 screens for success. Is that true?
Well, that's what you said before, is that that most advisors should be able to run their practice with a few simple screens.
Oh, okay. So I see what you're going with there. I was thinking we had 3 screens to present today, so I didn't know we had that. So anyway, but yeah, so 3 screens or maybe 3 strategies. Maybe not 3 screens, but maybe one individual stock portfolio and a couple other strategies to blend and match, whether they're a managed bond or whether they're an ETF. What we have suggested is, for instance, the way that stocks act, depending on style box and screening process, they're going to rotate through business cycles differently than ETFs or indexing will. Indexing acts differently than individual stocks. So by blending those two strategies together for maybe accounts with greater than 250 to 500 range, by doing that, maybe if you want some bonds in there, you can do that. You can easily bring like an all-weather ETF strategy and have a bond element already inherent in there. So it comes down to whether you're doing a 2-sleeve or 3-sleeve type approach when you're blending the accounts. So, but I think you can do multiple strategies if that's the case. Some of you have larger practices. There's other opportunities that you can play into here from that standpoint. So sound process. Define the goal. This is kind of riding that horse that we did last time. Is what is the goal? Well, everybody will make money, right? Okay.
Right.
But maybe there's more to it than that. Maybe it's what the goal is achieving something for a specific style box. Talked to somebody the other day that had a very specific niche, had a group of folks that they dealt a lot with that were socially conscious. Those are other elements that you can bring in to your filtering and all that process, which ultimately what you want to be able to do is you don't want to have somebody who's socially conscious, doesn't want alcohol, and all of a sudden you got Bud on there or some, I don't know what it is now, I guess they got bought out by some foreign deal, but whatever, some alcohol company, you don't want that in there. Then you want to make sure that you have that process of defining the goal, making sure all the screens and the filters meet that. Mitch, you got anything there?
Yeah, right along that, I mean, I think you hit all the key points on there is, what do you want it to do and what do you want it not to do? And as you mentioned, things like socially conscious have been particular, sizzle items or marketable items that have been popular lately. The green stocks and other things like that. The companies that have these socially conscious values to it, one of the questions is, well, what does that mean, and how do you screen through that? If that's something that you believe as an advisor and want to make sure that you're only deploying assets into it, or your clients line up with that, well, then you need to make sure that you have some way of screening through it, either from a high-level viewpoint or just having that familiarity with the companies to be able to filter that out. I know in the past some advisors didn't want to own companies like Abercrombie or because of the more salacious nature when it comes to how they advertise. And they equate that like the other sin type stocks. So it's those type of things. If that's something that you want to make sure fits your clientele, you need to be aware of that as you go through the stock selection process, so that you don't grab hold of some names, deploy capital, and then have to answer those questions to clients as to why it is you're deploying something that doesn't line up with your niche client base potentially.
Yeah, so just kind of moving down this list so we can get to actually screening and doing some material things, which I forgot to put the spreadsheet on the other computer. So I will figure out a way to get that over there while we're talking about some other things. And we go off of this particular screen we're on because that's the computer I need to use. But the one of the things here that I think is key is setting key variables and time frames. And typically we've suggested use the intermediate time frame, which is a weekly basis. And there's occasion, depending on the type of style box and things that you're doing, that you might go to a shorter term like a daily modeling. But for the most part, we want you to stay in that intermediate range. And once again, if you contact us, we'll help you to develop that. We've seen some folks do some interesting thing with combination of daily and weekly trades as well. Removing the hindsight bias. Typically what someone will do is do a screen. They input the stocks and go through the setup process in our wizard, and what ends up coming out is a set of a group of stocks, and they look back 5 years and they go, ooh, wow, look at that, up 240% and
up 1,000% in some cases.
So what that is that means you would not have picked those stocks. We have some ability, it's limited, I would tell you, and what can really generate a good quality back test, but we do have some abilities in our screening. Some of the screens we're going to talk about today, that we do have annual screens that you can walk forward, and then from a certain point they're going quarterly. But one of the elements when we talk about the maintenance session we're going to be discussing is how to review the stocks in real-time mode and determining which stocks stay and come out and all those type of things. In the right now, to this point yet, we still are unable to be able to demonstrate that part of the process in going backwards. So what we can do is we can certainly pick a different group of stocks, which even skews it to the better or the worse. You don't know because you're not actually running the clear maintenance strategy. The reality is this, is that back tests are all great and all, but the only thing that counts is how it acts as we walk forward. And one of the things we won't touch on today, but when we get into maintenance, is building your tracking manual and some other things, some very basic steps that you can do that will help you to ensure that you're in track and delivering the process that you want. And Mitch set me up on this screen with the human bias. So I touched on that a minute ago. Let me just elaborate just a little bit, because I think this is where a lot of mistakes are made, and it's pretty easy to figure out if you did it or not. And I think when we get into the screens, I'll talk about it a little bit more. Will probably be one of those subjects that keep coming up as we do the broadcast. But the bottom line is, anything that you don't like I said earlier, we lost money 4 years ago and that company really hurt us bad or whatever, all those kind of things need to be thrown out. You want to look at these things for what they are today and go forward. So when you're doing a screen, what that is a snapshot in time at this moment, what that stock looks like on a balance sheet standpoint. So when you start to combine balance sheets with the best way to put this, balance sheets with the technical and the quantitative, there's some, it's a little bit of a puzzle, but that's why when we go through the maintenance, we've found a way to rotate these ideas and to continue to flow in a similar fashion, which ends up you want to walk forward a process, and that walk forward process cannot have too many variables in it, because then it becomes one of these quant words, not predictable. And predictable is about how the stocks that you're applying to the system are going to respond over time. So if you're always doing the same filters, the same screens, the same, you're going to end up walking that forward and being able to evaluate maybe over the course. It takes, listen, this is super slow motion here. It'd probably take you four quarters, maybe as many as 6 quarters to evaluate certain types of the process that you might want to maybe change a little bit. You actually have to give it some time to work. There is no way, I actually say there is no good, bad, or wrong way to screen. It's just that once you set up the screen, you need to walk it forward. And the walk forward part is the most important. So for instance, when I was developing VPM and we were looking at how the models did, we had to look and walk forward the process without looking back. So I won't get into that. We'll actually do some things on the models themselves, but every walk forward process needs to not have any hindsight in it. So there can't be anything there to ensure that at least you have a good sampling of things that you're walking forward. And you'll get some pretty good characteristics, and that's one of the beauty of staying within the process, staying within the screen, staying within the filters. What it does, it gives you some real context of what you're doing and how to evaluate what you're doing. And we see way too much randomness, way too much guessing. Well, that wasn't working 3 months ago, so we're going to switch over to this new screen that does this, and we'll try that for a little while, and then, well, that didn't work, and now we'll try something else. And by the time you get to that 4 to 6 quarter window, pretty much you don't even know what you were doing in the first time. Then when you started, you can't remember it. And most folks aren't writing down and tracking things that would be good. Part of what my goal has been since I started this company, Mitchell had the opportunity at 2006 when you came out to my training session.
That's right, December 2006.
Yeah, and it was a long time ago. But the realities of what I did then was always trying to emphasize this point of walking forward, understanding what you're doing, and just do it. And you're always going to have, in 2010 National Conference, I spoke about the leading and lagging windows that you're going to deal with. I don't care if you're a mutual fund, I don't care who you are, best hedge fund on the planet, Ray Dalio, whoever, you're going to have leading and lagging windows. You're going to have times when you're doing better than whatever benchmark that you've chosen, or you're going to do a little worse. You're always going to be leading and lagging, because whatever style box or asset class, they come in and out of favor. So a good example is what's going on with the mid cap, and even more so on like the Russell 2000 area in the small cap environment. It's under siege right now, even though the S&P was able to make a new high. They're consolidating, and I don't believe they made a new high as of yet. So the human bias is anything that you come in with an attitude that wasn't somehow structured in how that decision process is going. When we bring up the screens, hopefully I'll get them onto the computer. When we bring those up, you'll be able to see that. So I want to move on here.
Well, and one other thing off that, one of the things that we often say around here, and that's where we came up with the idea of becoming a POW warrior, process over attitude and opinion, PAO. That human bias can be a dangerous thing at times, because it gets in the way of so much of it. A lot of advisors, they try to force their ideas into it. And it's one thing to say, well, I have the idea of doing a sector rotation strategy or an all cap blend stock portfolio. That's fine, as you had said before. It's one thing to have that type of approach to selecting your stocks. It's another thing where you start going out and grabbing this stock screen over here and a few names from this stock screen over here. And this other name is a local company, so I'm gonna go ahead and use that because I know a lot of clients ask about it. You very quickly start selecting all these different components to it, but it's not really a process. It's just slightly organized chaos.
Yeah.
In that you're just going all over, and I've seen so many advisors do this.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we have 8 screens out on our system right now, and they'll just go and I'll pick 3 here and 4 there, and it's just random. And yeah, they're all quality screens, but I have been an advocate since I started this company way back in 96, 97, 98, that you need to stick to a style box. That's why mutual fund companies have been built off being a quality value house, or whatever their strategies are. Some grew from what they started to a more diverse offering, but they started somewhere. The original founders of the company had a general belief in the markets, and that's what's nice about what we're trying to help you folks to do, is that you get to have those bias, you get to have those attitudes, and it's your business that you get to walk forward, and you get to be the pride of ownership should be huge, actually. So way too much on that. Let's move on. So I think we hit on some of this stuff already. Setting the screen, set frequency. How many needed? I guess that's how many stocks needed. How many stocks?
Yeah, because a couple different things on that. Just this year we've worked through a number of advisors that they're trying to rescreen on a monthly, in one case even on a weekly basis. They're trying to go out every single day, try to find the best names out there, and it just doesn't work. I mean, that's the greatest way to frustrate yourself, is trying to go out on too frequent of a basis to go out and grab new names and then toss out the old ones.
Well, Morningstar has this thing called the tortoise and hare. I think they still do it, and they rescreen every week on Tuesday. And it's funny because they choose the way they do it is like by hindsight bias, and they put out this track record how incredible it is if you do this. Meanwhile, they're switching handfuls of stocks every day, and you've got like 10 trades a day times 220, ever how many trading days there are, and all of a sudden you've got 3,000 trades to make that happen. And when you start to put in transaction costs, slippage, all the stuff that they aren't talking about, it doesn't work. And
yeah.
You guys aren't into that anyway. And working with a wealth environment, you need to slow it down to a point. So less is better to a point, less activity, longer windows. And I've talked about that on some of the other shows on our morning show when we're talking about the markets, is you want to find the place and increment of time when you're looking at this frequency that what is the best time to screen. Sometimes rescreening on a quarterly basis is overkill, depending on the strategy. It might 6 months, or we've seen really, really good strategies you rescreen once a year. So it doesn't have to be monthly. It doesn't. What's my line? I always say, don't confuse activity with accomplishment.
You got it. Yeah.
While you're doing this stuff, it doesn't mean you're going to accomplish anything. And you certainly can show that you've got lots of activity. We see a lot of this activity, and one of the things when we go into maintenance, one of the things that happens when you're doing that type of activity is you're actually cutting off some trades that are probably the best trades in the world. Let's say it could be Netflix, and you made 70%. You're like, oh wow, great, but it's not on the screen anymore. I'm going to take it off, and rather than letting VPM take you out, and you rotate out only to find out that it's a 400% gain, and everybody's talking about it, and then it's just, you don't want to take that bias just because. Even on a rescreen, that's why when we talk about the maintenance, we'll bring a lot of this in.
Also, when it comes to the stock selection, making sure that you're not grabbing too many stocks. I love the fact that a lot of these custodians are moving to a basis point trading pricing, where you could get unlimited trades or up to a fairly exorbitant amount of trades for just a few basis points. I love that model, but what a lot of advisors have started doing is they've started taking that latitude and try filling up their portfolios with even more stocks, because they feel like that because they have the ability of doing it without necessarily a cost impact to either them or the clients, that now they could go out and grab 100 or so many stocks for their portfolios when it's just not needed.
Right. Yeah, so can you backtest this? There's a lot of strategies to a point. As I mentioned, you can backtest. There are some limitations, but the part of the bias of the hindsight is not there. What you don't have is the real-time analysis that's done that will bring a different quality in the walk forward process. So you can demonstrate the back test on a set of stocks, but what you can't do is demonstrate the walk forward process. At least we can at the moment based on the stats that we have.
Well, and another thing worth that is some advisors, they say they have a process, as I mentioned before. And when I actually asked them, what names were on the list back in 2010, let's say, just a few years ago, they start really having a difficulty answering that question. Not because they don't have some of these base metrics on a fundamental basis, is because they've also let their own human bias come in, and they could tell you right now what they want to go out and grab out of a list of maybe 100 that they're trying to break down to 30 or 20 or somewhere around there. But when you look back on a prior list, they can't do that because they don't know what it was that they were thinking at that time. And again, it's off their gut, which is a dangerous thing to have as part of an investment element.
Yeah, and one of the things that the element here is, can you backtest? It's also really, there's another maybe better way to say that, is it recreatable? And
there you go.
And if you can recreate that same thought process at most points in time, then you've got something you can walk forward. And sometimes it's you can't backtest it because you can't get the elements, but you can walk forward that process. And those are things we want to work with you folks in developing. We'll talk about some things in general, but a lot of these, there are generalities and things that apply broadly across some of these decisions, but there are also things that come up depending on what types of things that you're doing that also can kind of bring in some different elements. So we're about 30 minutes into the show here. I guess we'll talk about a couple things here. This is actually getting into the screening. About time we can be able to screen, I get the sheets up there. We'll have to. This show will be continued, but I think we'll get to a couple of things. At least start the process of looking at some of the spreadsheets and some of the things that we need to do. But taking a look at this, filtering out the noise. That's pretty much along the lines of what I just talked about. Making sure that you don't have your screens are so tight you're not getting any stocks, but you also don't want them to be so wide in I guess in their scope that they're getting too many stocks. And then rotation, that's going to be really the walk forward. I think we should save that for another conversation. When we start talking about how to rotate the stocks would be more what's happening. But this goes back to the frequency. How often do I rescreen? Quarterly? Certainly not monthly. It's probably quarterly. Could be every 6 months, and it could be even an annual screen, because a lot of these screens, it's interesting, don't move around that much depending on what they are screening for. So that's why if you're doing an individual screen that you're utilizing on whatever, Zacks or whatever's out there, you want to make sure that that criteria, you can see how much it's moving. In fact, I think that screens can tell you a lot about market conditions as well, especially if you're doing value screens in particular. All of a sudden you'll see that list as the markets start to get higher and higher. There's fewer and fewer stocks out there that you can actually select because the idea of value has vanished.
Right.
So ER ratio, always a good thing to do that, and then probably something that could have been on here, maybe it's already on the next slide, is looking at the current duration, looking at the 30-30, 50-50 rule. Is that next slide?
There you go, next slide.
Yeah, I figured that. So that's what happens when you haven't looked at the slide. There it is. Look at that. How about that? So that was a natural progression of where this conversation should go. So timing, 30-30 rule is something pretty simple. And I believe in all the screens that we're doing, we have the VPM factor in there, right?
We do, yeah.
1 through 5. So what we do is we look at the actual duration of if there's a current holding trade, we'll rate it anywhere from most timely to the worst timely. And the 30-30 rule would be, a 1. And then up to 2 or 3, I think it's 50-50 or just 2.
I believe it's 2 is the 30-30 and 3 is 50-50.
Oh, okay.
But a great example of this, we had one advisor that was doing some sort of momentum play. Was it the IBD 50 or something like that? He was going out and grabbing some list on a far too frequent basis.
Yeah, and that's really common. And there's not only the IBD list are relative strength based. There's other issues that we could tear into that, but maybe we do it just to show. And it's okay to use it, but you need to understand what it is you're using.
Yeah, in his case, he wanted to buy into one of these positions, and when we actually looked at 2 or 3 of the trades, it was already up over 600% on three of these trades. I think 2 of them were up 700%. So what I said is, you missed it. I mean, yeah, I don't know what you want me to say on this, other than it's done very well. Too bad it didn't show up on the list.
And you have to watch out. Like that particular list has a tendency to be smaller cap, under $1 billion. So there are probably $300 million companies that hit their sweet spot and then got on a run and went up from 300 million to 1.4 billion, something crazy, and that's all good for them. But it'd been nice to go, as I know you all know, it's buy low, sell high. So
that's right.
Buy high, sell higher. I call it the Jim Cramer trade. So
I mean, it's just one of those things you have to be aware of. If you keep running a screen and it keeps giving you stocks that are past the 50-50 rule, it's probably not a good screen, because by the time that it's showing up on the screen, it's already the magic is gone on the trade, because we've already, we also did participate on it, but we've been in it far too long. So what I would try to do is either filter out the screen down a little bit to get some fresher trades, or maybe look to a different source if you constantly are finding trades that are all far too long in the tooth.
I had an aha moment a few weeks ago, and I thought what we need to do is find these stocks like that and go back and look and set to the date where VPM is buying them and see what the fundamental balance sheet looked like at that time. See if we could reverse engineer these ideas. And so, because really what you want to do is you want to find them when VPM's about to buy them and they're up 140%. You want to obviously find them a little earlier in the cycle. And I think some of these screens, especially relative strength screens, represent an issue. So let's see where we are next. Yeah, there's my line. That's why you laughed, right?
Yeah. I know your flow of thought. I don't know necessarily the order of it all the time.
That's kind of scary. We won't go there. I think, don't confuse activity accomplishment. I think I actually covered most of these things.
I think you hit all those. So
I did. So
one other note about that last point: daily trade systems don't equal better trades. It's one of those things where an advisor finds out that our system can operate on a daily basis, and they immediately want to go to that because they think that, well, the shorter the time frame, then the better the trades are going to be. And all it does is it creates more trades because we are shortening that time frame, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get better trades out of it. Anytime that I see an advisor's portfolio that has both daily and weekly trades, immediately I dig into it and I ask them, have you actually looked at the weekly trades on these symbols? one of my favorite stocks that has since gone private again, Caribou. They used to have a fairly good track record on the daily side, but it was only a couple percentage points better on the weekly than the weekly trade systems. And so I used to use that stock as a great example that, yes, you could get a little bit more profit by doing a daily trade system on it. But if you had just stuck with the weekly trade system, it certainly would have been a lot easier to have up and running in your practice because there was less trades, less activity, less time out of your day to place those trades. And you weren't seeing nearly as much market noise where you were buying and then selling a couple weeks later. You were in it for probably about 6 to 9 months at a time, as opposed to maybe 2 or 3 months, depending on which of the weekly or daily trade systems you were on.
Yeah, so Mitch, I've got you all by yourself here. So no one can see me while I'm ducking and weaving to get this. I did get the spreadsheet on the computer. So I think what we'll do here is when I bring that up, I'll bring us both back up with the spreadsheet. I'm just adjusting the view just a little bit here. So I think it'll be easier for everyone to see, I hope. Just one more little adjustment here, and we should be okay. Let me just give me just a minute. So, yeah, I think like I said, we just see we see a lot of stuff, and sometimes it's kind of weird.
Well, and I'd say that probably the biggest issue around screening, and this is why we've sort of beaten this horse so much thus far in this meeting, it isn't so much that the screening process that advisors are doing is flawed when they complain about results. It's their own interaction around their screens have had the greatest impact. They've either forced their own opinions, they've deviated from one strategy to another, they're jumping from one approach to a radically different one just a few months later. It's the advisor going around the process as opposed to the original process. Sometimes some advisors have some pretty decent ideas, but because they never had the conviction, they never have the courage to go through those tough times of a process where maybe it's lagging a particular benchmark, they end up just tossing out the experience that they had with this strategy, and they missed out the oasis that was waiting for them if they'd just gone a little bit further in the desert.
Yeah, so I have this spreadsheet up, Mitch. You can see that now, I'm sure.
Yep.
On multiple screens, I expect.
Yes.
So, we brought up something we've named Bob's growth screen, and I have people a lot of times ask me what we're doing. We have a Bob Sherpa portfolio. Those of you who came to a conference a couple of years, I made the mistake of showing my Sherpa portfolio, and everybody wanted it. I don't run money for a lot of customers, so it's a much different type of style that I'm doing for myself versus that. And there's, in some cases, some turnover. But we've come up with the idea that we're going to be showing some of this stuff that we're doing, and I believe we've got a new value as well. Did we put my value screen out there yet?
We haven't put that one out there yet. No.
Okay. Well, we will. That's another promise.
New screens are coming out next week.
Hopefully, I didn't just overpromise and underperform very soon. But it is out there, and we just need to put that out there. So I'm sure if you know how it is, the squeaky wheel gets oiled. So just complain if you haven't heard about it soon. But we're working on several things, and like I said before, there's a couple of things when we go into the ETFs. Some of the new technology we've rolled into the VPM Connect website gives you a lot of visibility, so you can start to see how these decisions are impacting your portfolio. And we've got a plan of putting up a smaller stock strategy that you'll be able to see some transparency, see what it looks like, because it's important, I think, to understand the impact of your decisions. I don't think many folks understand, and this randomness that we see happening all the time gets kind of scary, because usually what it represents is some underperformance or some disappointment in what's going on. And sometimes we're able to come in and intervene in time and get the ship turned back in the right direction, and sometimes there's just no turning back. And it's sad for me. I hate to see any of you guys leave, just like you guys don't like to lose customers. When I see that happen for all the wrong reasons, it's depressing. And Mitch can tell you, I just sob, and I go have 2 martinis and then I'm better. No, I'm just kidding. But the reality is it is sad to see that, because they're giving away a process they really, you're giving away a process you really believed in, and for all the wrong reasons, because some of the things weren't applied. And the worst reason was you didn't call us and let us know you were struggling a little bit. So I'm sure I'm opening Pandora's box in a good way. So we want to hear those things, and we're hoping that we'll be able to do this. So Mitch, why don't we talk about this screen? You've went through it and filtered it, and you can kind of run the show here. And I think I can bring up the screen even if we want to be everyone to be able to see it without our faces on there, but it'll be okay for a moment, I guess.
All right. So with this growth screen, what we did is we went backwards in time. We tried to grab a list of stocks that fit fairly specific criteria. So in this case, we looked at the earnings per share that was greater the last year over the last compared to the last 3 years. So it showed growth in earnings compared to the last 3 years. And then we stacked it one more layer and we said, all right, now that they've had a good amount of growth over the last couple years, let's take a look at that 3-year average and compare that to the prior 5 years. Because what we want to do is get some forward-moving growth, not just on a very short-term basis, but on a longer-term basis as well. We've also put in a few different metrics in there to filter down this list. We've removed things like ADRs so that it doesn't have liquidity concerns on it when it comes to trading. And what we did is we came up with this list that you see right here. And so as I said earlier, as Bob said as well, you should be able to take a process and back test it to a point. And so that's what we did with this, is we put in a few pretty straightforward criteria into our system, and we were able to populate this list. And you can see that I went through year by year and filtered out the names. One of the things you'll notice is that at the end of 2009, that list was much smaller compared to the year prior to that. And the reason for that is, just as Bob mentioned earlier, when you get to the top of a market run-up like we saw in 2009 as well as last year, sometimes the screens get really narrowed because of the criteria that's involved, just because the amount of growth that's taken place has really skewed the variables in such a way that there just aren't a lot of passing companies. And so you need to have the rules in place to decide, well, what are you going to do with that when the names get so thin like that? And then when it came to it, what I did is I simply went through this list, and I grabbed, I sorted it by the market capitalization, and then I just grouped the names and tried to grab, in this case, the top 8, the bottom 8, and the middle 8 from the list. And so it can appear to be a random selection of names, but we've already grabbed some quality names as deemed by the stock screen.
Yeah, let me go ahead. I want to make a note here, because this I worked with an advisor who knows, maybe you're listening, but one of the things that we did, we took out that human bias selection that he was dealing with, and we did this bottom 8, middle 8, top 8, otherwise top down from the top of the screen and capitalization. We grabbed $1 billion and grabbed 8 stocks up to that point, and then we grabbed the middle 8. And it was interesting, by doing that, the performance went up substantially. And here's the human element thing. By doing what that seems to be random, it is, but it's a constant randomness. It's like a slot machine. It's always looking at the same odds. It's always doing the same thing, and the probabilities come up different. And really, what screening is about, my opinion, is it's about being consistent, walking this forward. But it's sort of like, I think it's a bad analogy only, but it's like looking for golden nuggets. So you're panning for these nuggets, trying to find them. And in this case, the nuggets can grow, or I haven't figured out a good analogy with that. It all dies right after I get the nuggets out of the pan. But the bottom line is, what we're looking for is the best things that are there. In this case, we're just taking samplings out of the screen, but we're always applying it the same way. So it does not have to be this particular thing. I'm going to bring I think I am. I'm going to bring Mitch and I back up live with our pictures here. But it doesn't have to be, is this particular criteria. What it can be is where maybe you picked one of the columns from the screen and say, you know what, EPS is most important to me. I don't care. Just do it the same way every time, and over and over and over and over again. Walk it forward, and we'll talk about that. That'll be really the walk forward / maintenance sessions we do. And I know we're getting fairly close on time here. We want to develop a couple ideas because we want to keep these shows to the hour that we told you they're going to be. The network will not shut us off. Actually, we could go for, I think they'll let us go up to 3 hours nonstop. That's a little too much for me. And then a buddy of mine told me I should be smoking a cigar and having a martini and lighting the show up. But I think that might be a little much for us all, especially since I don't smoke cigars. So, but this is the stuff that we're trying to bring in to focus so that you don't do those things. Looks like Mitch is chomping at the bit to say something here.
Well, I was just going to add to it that, again, and I know I already said this earlier, a lot of the problems that advisors have when it comes to the screening portion of building a stock portfolio isn't actually the screen. It's what they did to the screen afterwards. It's how they took that last leg of, if the screen has 100 names, they didn't properly deal with how to further filter that or rank that list down. Or in an example like we see with this screen, where in a 2009 environment, when we close out the year, they have just a few names, and they never dealt in the creation process. Well, what do I do with that at that point? And if you answer those questions right at the very beginning of the process, you'll know what to do when you get faced with that in real life. And we've seen some pretty interesting markets, especially over the last 5 or 6 years. We've seen a major market correction. We've seen a pretty nice run up, and we've also seen some fairly elongated sideways market with some volatilities tossed in there at times.
You must have been to your sensitivity class. That was a crash, the complete meltdown. Correction, I think not, but anyway. But yeah, it was pretty severe, right?
It was a severe crash, and but history has shown us that this happens, and it will happen again unless the powers that be in Washington keep forcing the market up. We're due for another one at some point. So what are you going to do for that?
Yeah, I saw 3 articles today, folks, 3 that were all talking about how the market is about to collapse any minute. Guess what? Probably not going to happen right now. Those guys are starting to come out of the woodwork right now, and and those of you that read the commentary and listened to Market Thunder yesterday, you kind of know where there's possibly something a little different going on. But it's you've got Dr. Doom, and you've got all of them showing up. All of a sudden, somebody was talking about it dropping 10-15% once it makes a new high, but then it's going to go right back up again. And I wish I had that crystal ball. Actually, this is interesting, and I'll show you folks something. Just so you know, I actually do have a crystal ball. It's right here. It doesn't work. I've tried to get it to work. I've tried to look into it. But anyway, I thought I'd mention that for those that wonder sometimes if I have a crystal ball, I actually do. It doesn't work, but I have one. Anyway, so, as we go through these screens, and we're winding down to the last 6 minutes or so, Mitch, did you want to go and do we want to show what this screen resulted? Since I didn't, I actually didn't bring up
2.0.
I didn't, but I'll need to probably log in as you though, right?
What you could do is you could share the portfolio.
Yeah, that's more trouble for me.
Here, I'll just put it on your name. Give me 1 second.
Why don't you just log it in? Why don't you log in right there? You can see the screen. Just log in as you.